Okay, so welcome to Planboard. The tool is Planboard and it's by Chalk. We'll start with the land acknowledgement. The Creator gifted us with this land that we are blessed to share and care for together. The Calgary Catholic School District acknowledges that the land we gather on, Mohkinstsis, is the ancestral territory of the Siksika Sitapi, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, and the Amska Piikani. We acknowledge all First Nations and Métis of Treaty 7 lands, the Tsuut'ina, and the Ithkabi, which includes Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. The Calgary Catholic School District commits to advancing reconciliation guided by truth, respecting treaty laws, and humbly walking alongside First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. We recognize all who live, work, and play on these lands and who now call this place home. Please join us in this prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear God, thank you for giving me hope, because without hope, I would just be positive about everything. Hope helps me do lots of new things and makes me dream of things I can do and one day doing them. Hope makes trying new things and not giving up. That's by a grade 3 student at St. Philip. It's a good reminder to have hope and not give up. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay. I'm Jen Perry. I'm the elementary social studies consultant, and I'm a big time user when I was in the elementary classroom of Planboard. And with me is Scott. Are you
Is
there?
figuring out how to unmute his mic after not doing one of these for a while. Thanks, Jen. Hi, I'm Scott Weston, one of the EdTech consultants. If you've attended anything to do with Brightspace in our board in the past 2 years, it's probably been me. And Jen invited me along today to learn how to use Planboard. I know I can always use whatever tools are presented to me to help stay organized, and this is a very, very good one. So thanks, Jen, for having me along, and I'm going to be the pilot of our program today. I've learned really to use it in the past couple of weeks, so we thought having the newbie demo how the tool works while Jen provides sage color commentary would be a good way to go about things. So thanks for attending, everybody. This is a really great turnout for the start of the year. So Chalk, Planboard is the tool, Chalk is the company, and Chalk is itself owned by the folks who run Power School. And it's a digital lesson planning and organizational tool. Teachers can do all kinds of stuff with it. You can create a schedule and a timetable. You can design daily lessons digitally. You can import standards and curriculum, which is an extremely useful tool. We'll spend a fair bit of time on that today. And you can reuse your plans in successive years and share lessons both as PDFs or as a digital link that your colleagues can access. So there's a lot of really, really great potential with Chalk. We're not going to spend a ton of time on any individual feature today. We just kind of want to give everyone a broad introduction to the tool and also build some time in as we're going for you folks to take a look and experiment and build as we go as well. Of course, just a quick mention as well, I've been muting some mics as folks have been coming in. Just a reminder that if we're all getting used to our digital meeting rules again, if everybody can just have their mics muted while we're working through the presentation. Jen's going to be watching the chat while I'm busy clicking away and demoing, so please do feel free to post your questions in the chat as we go. And we're going to stick around afterwards for a few minutes as well to take your questions, offer some advice. So we'll go from there as well, folks. So again, thank you for attending today. Last thing I want to mention before I toggle off the slide, Chalk also has a mobile app here. We have a link on this slide. And after I back out of my slideshow here, I'll drop a link to the slides in the chat for you to access. This link will take you to the App Store, and you can install Chalk on your mobile device and use it in that capacity as well. So it's a great tool there too. We've got some additional resources embedded here as well, some links to some webinars from the team at Chalk. They're extremely detailed and well organized. I would encourage you, after working through this today, to not only use the recording of our presentation today as a resource, but also access those webinars and video compilations. They're a great tool for learning the program and answering any questions you might have. Also, folks, please bear with me today. I'm just getting over a bit of a bug, so just bear with my slightly more sinusy voice than usual. Thank you for your patience. All right. From here, I'm actually going to back out of our presentation, and I'm going to drop a link to the slides into the chat.
You know what? I am an excellent co-pilot, Scott, and I have sent the presentation and also the login to Chalk.
Amazing.
So it's just in the chat.
I should have known you were ahead of the curve there, Jen. Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, from here then, because Jen's already beat me to that punch, I'll pop right over to Chalk. Jen already dropped the link to that one in the chat as well, so you can use that to access the web application. The first time you navigate to Chalk, you're probably going to want to use the sign up tab here rather than log in. So sign up is going to look like this. I would always encourage folks to use single sign-on functionality. That means essentially just clicking this Google button down in the corner here. This will connect your @Learn account to Chalk and allow you to sign in and keep track of your digital lessons very easily. So again, navigate to that sign up tab, press that Google button, and I'll actually give you a minute or two here to get logged in and signed up if you'd like. Feel free to, we're going to build some breaks in as we go today to follow along with our presentation here and set up a rudimentary framework in the app that you can fill out later. Feel free to follow along and work through it that way, or just refer to the recording in the future and use that to step through the process as well. So we'll take about a minute here to get signed up. Follow that link in the chat. Use that sign up tab and Google single sign on there with your Learn account, and we will pick up again in a couple of minutes.
And if you need a reminder, because maybe you haven't been Zooming in a while, there's just that minimize button on the top right, and it will take you back to your own web browser so you can play with Chalk there, and then your Zoom will just be a little window on the side that you can just pop back into.
All right, folks. So while Jen is reposting that link, I'm just going to log into Chalk here and just keep on rolling with our presentation for today. Again, if I get a little bit ahead of you, no worries. Just you can use the recording after we've wrapped up today. We'll distro that in the next couple of days. You can use the recording to step back through this process. And always, of course, feel free to drop questions in the chat. So I'm going to head over to log in because I've already used Chalk before, and I'm going to log in using my Google account. And this will pop me into the Chalk interface. So there's a couple of steps we need to do here first, folks, to get signed up and to get everything configured so we can start planning. So the first place I would encourage everyone to start is to head up here to this lessons dropdown at the top here, and you're going to head down to timetable. If you haven't used the Chalk platform before, this is probably the best place to start, as it will step you through all the different steps you're going to need to take to set up the basics before you start planning. So again, that's under lessons and then timetable. We'll be taken to this handy little intro window here that tells us, let's set up your planner. So the first thing we have to do is set up the dates and times for the semester that we're working in. From there, we'll be able to configure individual lessons and individual days that we can use as we proceed. So I'm going to press this Let's Get Started button. And from here, we have our planner name. So we have 2024-2025 school year here. If you're going to set this up in a year-long block, if you're at a school that's using a year-long schedule, you can just set the dates here. So for example, our school year here running from September the 3rd to June 25th. That's one way to do it. Alternatively, if you are on a quarter or a semestered system where you're going to be planning for, so let's say, half the year at a time, you can adjust the name here. So maybe 2025 or 2025 school year semester 1, and you can adjust the dates accordingly. Let's say you're sometime in January, you've got your switch over, you can set the dates in that capacity as well. So there's a lot of customizability here. Feel free to set this up in a way that best matches your schedule. And we'll take a short break there as well, 1 or 2 minutes, while you get that set up. So again, we got here from lessons and timetable. Follow the prompt to this first page and set up that date range in there. We'll pick back up again in a minute.
And Scott, if you're a high school teacher and you're doing semesters, you could alter those dates and just set up like one semester. So you would create 2 different semesters.
All right, everybody. So now that we've got our date ranges there, hopefully configured, we're going to move on to the next step and we'll provide a little more work time after that. So we've got our planner name and our date range in there. From here, we're going to hit next step. And this page is going to ask us about our teaching schedule. So we've got a few options here. One is daily. If we teach the same classes every day, we can select that option and we'll pre-configure some stuff for us. We have weekly. Again, same classes every week. We can go that route. Or probably the most common is going to be rotating. And a rotating schedule is quite flexible. We'll see that on the next tab here, where we can tell it, okay, we've got a day A or a day B and a day B schedule. We have a multi-day schedule, something like a 6-day cycle, or we maybe have a block of weeks that repeats. Being that this is the most complicated, but also, frankly, probably the most common schedule that we're going to see in our schools, we'll choose the rotating schedule here as our demo environment. So I'm going to click on rotating and then choose next step. Now from here, I've got some customization that I can build in. So again, just for the sake of demonstration and argument today, let's go with a 6-day cycle. So I'm going to mouse over here where it says days, and I'm going to bump that up to a 6-day cycle. You'll also notice that I have a couple of radio buttons here, some toggles that are enabled here. I have label days with numbers. If that's off, we get a day A, B, C, D, E, and F, but most of our schools, if we're on a 6-day cycle, are going to be numbered off. So I would encourage you folks to have that one on. The other one that we want to use here is this off days affect rotation. We're going to get to off days later, but essentially what those let us do is tell Chalk what days we're off school. So for example, for our Truth and Reconciliation commemoration day on the 30th, we can tell Chalk we don't have classes that day, and it will bump our 6-day cycle accordingly. So keep that one toggled on as well. It's a really useful one too. So again, on our customized schedule page, we're going to adjust our days there based on a rotation. So if you have a day AB, just leave it as 2 days and maybe even turn those numbers off so you have your day A and B. If you're on a 6-day cycle, bump it up to 6 and leave those numbers on. Either way, leave that off days affect rotation button enabled before we continue. So we'll take another short break here while folks configure this one. And Jen, am I missing anything? Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think it looks great.
Okay, so just know with Chalk, it's very forgiving. If you create something and you need to go back and adjust it, you can absolutely go back and like toggle to make sure you have the numbers. And at the end of the session, we thought we would give some time. If you have like individual questions, we can stay on. We'll stop the recording and just stay on and kind of work through them with you.
For sure, absolutely.
Okay, should we get into some fun?
Yes, I think so. All right, so I've bumped it up to our 6 days here. We got our number days and our off days affecting rotation, and we'll hit next step here. So from here, this is actually going to take us into the class window here. And this is where we actually start to set up our classes. So I'm going to add a couple of demo classes here and show you folks how that works. And then we'll take a couple of minutes again for you to configure a few of those before we step through how to actually add content to those lessons on those days. So what I'm going to do up here with my add a class button, so I'm going to create just a couple of placeholder classes. I'm not going to build out a full schedule here, folks, because it's not really necessary for demo purposes. But we're going to see how this works. So you can see here when you click add a class, you can add both a class period and a non-teaching period. And I'm going to use both of these for our demo. So for example, for classes, let's add a math class. And when we're creating these, we can actually set the color. So everybody knows that math is red. So we're going to choose red for math. I know that might be a controversial take, but there it is.
It's very controversial, but I do agree with you.
Thanks, Jen. So we'll drop that one in there. So we've got math. I'm going to add another class, and let's go ahead and add social studies. Everybody knows social is blue. Again, sort of hot take of the day, but there it is. And lastly, we've got a couple of classes to play with. I'll go ahead and press that add a class button and add a non-teaching period as well. So everybody's favorite, lunchtime. And we'll make lunch, I don't know, let's go with green. Green's a happy color. We'll create our lunch block. So you can see those are labeled a little bit differently too. We've got solid color blocks for actual classes, and then just a frame one here for our lunch block. Now, there's a couple ways to add these to your schedule. If you are a sort of like visual click and dragger, you can absolutely do that. So I can take math and drop it in like this. You can use the slider here to adjust the time. You can move it around. Definitely an option. If you are I like to drag things and drop them into a neat little pattern, that's absolutely a way to do it. The other way, especially if you have a more regular schedule, like you kind of know what days are going to look like what, you can also press this helpful little schedule button here. So pop open a dialog box that lets you tell Chalk, okay, I have this class on these days at this time. So let's say I know my math class is going to run from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. And I know I'm going to have math on days 1, 3, and 5. I can configure all that in there, hit schedule, and it will drop those math blocks into my schedule. Similarly, I'll do social just in case I went a little fast on that one. I'll click the schedule button over here on the left, and I'll say, okay, I know that I've got social from 10:45 until 11:45, and I know that class is going to be happening on days 2, 4, and 6 instead. So having selected all of that, I can hit schedule, and I'll drop that into my schedule here as well. Now I'm going to add lunchtime as well because we definitely need that. And I'm going to give us an extra long lunch, which we know isn't true, but we wish was true. So we'll say 11:30 until, actually that conflicts with my social studies block. So let's say 11:50 until 12:50. We're going to have that nice hour-long lunch every day. So I'll select all there and schedule that in here too. And we'll see why those non-class time blocks are useful in our schedule later. We can add notes to them. So for example, if we have something like supervision, we can add that in that block to keep track. Okay. Now, one last thing.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in.
Go for it, Jen.
Just from a former elementary combined grade teacher, you can also put 2 blocks together. So you'll just kind of imagine I would have like a grade 4 social and a grade 5 social, and I could put them together, and maybe Scott, you can just kind of model what that could look like if you just kind of move it. Yeah. And then when you go into your day planner, it will have both of those blocks. You can add separate notes if it's kind of a little cool tip and trick.
For sure. Thanks, Jen. Yeah, that's definitely a good call. Yeah, you can drop those blocks. If you overlay them over top of each other, it'll actually split the class, and you can see that reflected in your day planner. So yeah, absolutely good call. Thanks, Jen. So once all of this is in here, there feels like there should be a save button somewhere. There isn't. The save button is actually the start planning button.
Actually, Scott, sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, please go for it.
Here's one who showed me this cool tip that I didn't know about. In the settings, the little setting icon, the little gear, is a great place to add your standards, which you discovered.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
So another really great thing that Chalk does, and I cannot overstate how solid this is you can actually attach your curricular outcomes. Chalk uses standards because it's an American company, but you can add your curricular outcomes, your course, to the actual schedule blocks here in your schedule. So for example, we're going to pretend we're teaching grade 8. So I'm just going to head over here to edit, and under advanced options, I'm going to select add standards here. Now, because it's a Power School company, a whole pile of different curriculum documents have been uploaded here. No work on our part required, which is awesome. So if I go over here to add standards, and I search Alberta Math 8, what we'll see is a whole bunch of documents pop up. Now, I'm going to use the grade 8 math from 2016 just for posterity here. I believe new curriculum is being added over time. But if I hit preview here, we're going to see we have all of our curricular outcomes listed. We can actually attach these not only to our schedule blocks here, but then to individual lessons to keep track of where we're addressing curricular outcomes, which is super, super helpful. So I'll hit select there. And now you can see that under my standards, I have the grade 8 math curriculum attached to this block. So I'll hit save there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for social studies. So just for consistency, I clicked on the gear, social, advanced options, add standards. And I'm going to choose Alberta Social 8. Forgive my clicky keyboard. And then there we go, Alberta Grade 8 Social Studies. Let's preview to make sure it looks consistent. It does. I see Japan in there. I know that's grade 8. And we'll hit select. And now that has been added as well. So I'll hit save. And this is going to be important later. We'll show how to pull up those outcomes and actually reference them later. So again, thanks, Jen, for mentioning that. Before I go ahead and hit my start planning button here.
It does not automatically save. I have done this.
Yes.
I've saved my theme table, and just walked away because it doesn't say save and just assumed I live in like a Google Drive world where everything just automatically gets saved. You have to hit start planning every time if you do any kind of edits. Otherwise, it will not save.
That is correct. So I'll hit start planning here to lock that in. And as you can see, it dumps me right into the week planner here, which is awesome. We'll touch on this in a minute, but I do want to give, being mindful of time, probably 2 to 3 minutes for you folks to on that planning screen to get your classes entered in there. So I'm going to mute my mic for a little bit here, take about 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll pick back up and look at adding content to our individual days. One thing I will point out here, folks, as well, as you're working away, if you lock in those classes and then realize, oh shoot, I need to go back and change something, under the Lessons tab up here in the corner, if you head on down to Timetable, it will take you back to this page, and you can make whatever changes you need to. Also, under Change Rotation here, this answers a question in the chat from earlier. If you click that Change Rotation button, you can make modifications to that rotation that you designed at the start as well. So our next thing that we're going to take a look at is the planner view. Now that we've set up our classes, this is the bulk of the work for setup. Now that we've set up our classes, we can head over to our planner. And this is where you were deposited after hitting sort of save and start, but you can also get here from lessons and then selecting week or day planner. Now, there's a couple of different ways to navigate the screen. The week view is probably the one where you're going to spend your most time. This lets you kind of view a week at a glance. And I want to explain a couple of different fields that are present in the screen before we continue. So you'll see up at the top here, you've got your date and you've got your days. One thing I want to point out here, if I toggle forward here, so Friday, September, oh, actually here, let's talk about, before I continue, let's talk about managing those off days. That's something I missed. So if we head up to lessons here and we head over to our semesters button at the bottom here, I know a lot of teachers like to drop all of their days off, holiday dates, et cetera, into the schedule right out of the gate so they don't have to worry about it later. So if you head over again to lessons and then semesters, and then mouse over that semester we've set up, you'll see this Manage Off Days button. We can click on that, and what that'll let us do is add those off days before we even start lesson planning. So I'm not going to enter a ton right now, but just as an example, we know we've got that off day, our day of truth and reconciliation. And we know that that range is going to be just September 30th to, again, September 30th. So once I've selected those dates and clicked add, we'll see that that's been added to my off days. And again, as you notice there in that interface, we can add single days, we can add ranges. So you can add, for example, the Christmas break or other holiday ranges. And when I hit save, what you'll notice when I navigate back to my week planner, if I toggle forward here, so there's Friday, September 27th, day 1. If I toggle ahead, we have our TRC day is noted here in our planner. And you'll notice that Tuesday, the 1st, the day after that day of commemoration, picks up with day 2. So our settings are configured correctly there. We've noted that day is off classes and our rotation is picking up the way that it should. So I just wanted to mention that before we carry on. Now let's head back to, let's go with tomorrow, Thursday the 19th. This will be our demo day. So here's how to actually add some of the content to our lessons. So you might want to work out of week view here. This is one of my favorite screens, but you can also look at single days at a time as well. If we click day and move forward to Thursday tomorrow, we see we have that math period and our lunch block here as well. One thing that I want to highlight are these note fields. These are really, really useful. We can see them here under the single day view. We can also see them here under the week view. And this is just a good place to add sort of miscellanea for stuff that's going on during your day. So for example, if you know,
Scott, I have a note for you. Sorry, Scott. I have a
go
note
for it, Jen. Absolutely.
Can you put a note on Wednesday, September 18th to wish Scott a happy birthday?
Appreciate it.
And not to plan webinars on his birthday for him?
You know what?
Just
it's okay.
Sometimes
it happens. I appreciate it. All right, there we go. So we've got a note on that day, and maybe 19th is a bake sale. Let's talk to our students about the holiday bake sale. Thank you, Jen. So we've got our notes on there. And again, those are just good fields to just drop any sort of miscellanea for the day that you can keep track of. And I'll show you why this is useful in a little bit here too. So let's head over here now to our day plan and do some planning for that 19th. You'll also notice here that the note retained that information from the week view. All of these different perspectives talk to each other, so our notes and stuff stay consistent. So from here, we can mouse over our lesson space and we can choose add content. What this does is it pops open a pretty bog standard text editor. It's nothing crazy fancy, but it kind of doesn't need to be. There's a lot of really great tools in here. So for example, we could call our lesson here, let's go binomials. That's a math word that I know. It's going to become very apparent very quickly here that I am a humanities teacher. So we've got polynomials in here. So maybe I should have picked a social day. Why didn't I pick a social day? I'm just going to do that, Jen. Let's make my life easier. Social. Here we go. Okay, let's talk about Japan.
Social, yes.
Or maybe even medieval Europe, because that will line up with the video I'm going to use in a second here. Okay, so we've got our medieval Europe lesson in there. There's our title. We can add some text in here as well. So for example, maybe we're doing a pre-check with our students. We're going to, reflect and discuss the previous lesson, and we're going to add some more stuff in here as we go. So this is a good place where we can just add some text notes. Again, simple but effective. Where the tool shines, though, is in some of its other flexible types of material it can handle. So for example, let's say there was a YouTube video that I wanted to embed. I can just toggle over to my YouTube and grab the URL from my top bar here. Hi, John Green, you're always a treat. And we'll head back over to Chalk. And let's say, at some point in my lesson, I want to refer to the crash course video for my students. If I head up here to the Insert Video button and click on that, I can drop the video URL right into that field and press Insert. And we'll actually drop the video right into my lesson plan. So this is a great spot to aggregate, bring together some of those digital resources. Speaking of digital resources, and I know I'm going a little bit quick here, folks. Again, I want to turn you loose by 4:30 if I can, so bear with me and feel free to view the recording. At the bottom here, I can also attach files from my Google Drive. If I click on that, I get an option here to sign in with my Learn account, and I can drop files directly in from Google, which is super great, all in one place, nice quick reference. And I can also click this button here, this paperclip, to attach files directly from my local computer. So if I'm going to upload files or attach things, I can do it that way too. One thing I also want to highlight here as well, remember when we attach standards to our classes. So when I go down here to the standards button, what this does is it pulls up that list that I attached right at the beginning. And I can pull materials here or rather I can pull outcomes from the program of studies. So medieval Europe, Renaissance Europe is kind of close. Let's just go with that and pretend we're going to make that leap. So maybe I'm attaching the origins of the Western worldview with Renaissance Europe and how Renaissance Europe formed the view of the West. As I'm clicking those off, you'll notice they've been added there on the right. And when I hit save, you can see that those standards are now attached at the bottom here and associated directly with that lesson. That's going to matter in a few minutes here. So now I've got a note here. I've added some content. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now when I toggle over to my week view, we'll see that my lesson material is in here, ready for me to access later. And from my month view, I can see the notes and the lessons that I'm going to address on those 2 days. So again, I know pretty quick here. I would love to give you folks a break to build out a little bit of a lesson, but I'm worried we're going to run over time. So bear with me. And if you've got some time at the end, let's do that. Before I move on to templates, Jen, anything that I'm missing here?
One thing that I would add is if you go back to your day lesson, this is just me. You've done some lesson planning, but things don't go as planned. You can actually go into that little options on right there, exactly. And you can either move your lesson. If you've done a ton of lesson planning, it actually shifts all your lessons. So what I would do is I would just copy my lesson. So copy it and get to this medieval Europe video, copy it, and then I would move it to my next class, just click on the next one and you can just copy and paste. So it's just a great way to shift things. Or if you are a really super organized teacher, you have your series of lessons and you can just shift them by one, that shift lesson works awesome as well.
Awesome. Good point, Jen. Absolutely. I think we all know what it feels like when you don't quite get to something. So yes, that's super valuable as well. Thank you.
There's a great question, Scott, about able to carry over these lessons for next year. Do you want to touch on this one? Because you've been playing with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's an option when you're configuring a semester, there's an option to pull in an entire semester's worth of information from previous years. And there's also various spaces throughout the tool to choose where you can choose to import materials and lessons and everything that you've already built in the past. So yeah, absolutely. It's a really great tool for pulling material in year over year. And that's fully functional inside of the free version. So yeah, very, very good question, Leslie. And thanks for pointing that one out, Jen. I appreciate it. All right. So let's see what I can wrap up here in 6 minutes. I bet I can do it. So the next thing I want to talk about here is let's talk about templates, and then I'll come back to sharing and printing these lessons. So one thing that I do want to highlight under our week view here, if you want to start from scratch with your lessons, you definitely can. You can just press the add content button and go for it. But I know a lot of us with our lesson planning, we have kind of a workflow or a template that we generally like to work with, depending on the subject area, for example, and Chalk lets us preset those. So if I head up here to my lessons dropdown, and I head over here to templates. What this will do is let me build out a framework, a lesson template that can be applied to future lessons. So if I click create a new template here, and I'm just going to do something really, really fast here. So let's say we're doing like a pre-check, a review from last day, a little bit of direct instruction, a little bit of formative check-in, and wrap up. There we go. I can add some neat little horizontal lines here, maybe to break things up a bit, so it's a little bit easier for me to work with later. That looks
and if you have a template in like a Google Doc, Scott, you can just I played around with that too, where you just like copy and paste, like highlight your Google Doc and just paste it in there, and it formats pretty nicely as well.
Exactly, that's a good way to do it too, Jen. So once you've sort of built that template out and it's developed in a way that you think will help you with your lesson planning in the future, not going to be too picky here, want to be picky. What you can do is head up to this button here, assigned to classes, and this will let you choose one of your classes to sort of batch fill this in that you can use later. So for example, if I know that this is generally my footprint, my template that I'm going to use for social studies, if I click on social and then close this, when I head back to my week planner, what I'll notice is that all my social studies classes have now been pre-filled with that template. It's ready to go for me to use. So again, super helpful for saving time, which we know is always helpful. And again, those templates are fully editable. So if, for example, on the 16th, I know that I'm not going to use that, I can just backspace my way through it and just start from scratch. And that's totally fine. Now, one other thing I wanted to talk about here was sharing and printing our lessons. So if I head into my day planner here, we have two options here. So let's say I built a great lesson. I want to share it with a colleague. What I can do is press this share button, and it takes me to this dialog box with a couple of different options. So one thing I can do is if I click this public link option, I can copy this link out. And when I paste it, email this to a colleague or share it through a different channel, when they follow that link, it'll take them right to a view-only version of that lesson that I've built out. So they can use it, they can access it, they can do whatever they'd like with it. The other option is if I head over here to print/PDF, and then I choose create PDF, what the tool will do is generate a super handy printable version that has my note right up at the top. It's got my day, my date, it's got the content that I'd added, and it even converted my video into a URL. So if somebody needed to reference that, they could, and it's even clickable. You can even follow that link and it'll take you to the YouTube video. As well, you'll see my standards embedded there. So Jen highlighted before, these are great, for example, for subplans, for guest teachers. If you need to quickly generate a handy document for guest teachers, this is a nice, clean, elegant way to do it. Anything I'm missing there, Jen?
No. I think that the main thing is with the free version, you can only share digitally one, like a lesson at a time. However, when you're in your whole lesson, do you have multiple classes on this day or do you just have one class? I'm trying to look. We have, and you have lunch. Okay,
Yeah.
so when you go into this view, you can only share, for example, social. But when you go into the share button at the top, you are able to generate that print PDF and it does the entire lesson. So this is if you are, for example, a teacher who's under evaluation, or if you have a full subplan, this is a great way just to create that PDF and it will do all of your classes. It's pretty amazing. It's a life changer. One of my tips is that I would create like a kind of a template for guest teachers with some information about my students. And I would just have it like before school started on whatever, August 28th or whatever it was. And then I would use that to reference and just pull in that information. Save me a ton of time.
That's a really good point too, Jen. One thing you mentioned to me last week too is that note space can be a good one for something like emergency procedures, things like routines, stuff that's just going to be kind of common day to day, and that way it's up there and easy to reference for guest teachers as well when they access those PDFs. So, yeah, really really great tool. I like it a lot. All right, I'm almost there.
Okay, we have 1 minute. I think the coolest thing, we got to show it because it's super cool, is
Standards?
the standards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if I head up to lessons up here in the top left, then I roll over to standards here, what Chalk will let us do is actually generate a report on where and how many times in our long-term plan, once we've built it out in here, each of our curricular outcomes has been addressed, which is super valuable information for us to have as instructors. So, sorry, just did some muting there. Okay, so what we can do here is if we click export, what the tool will ask us to do is choose, okay, which standards do we want to export? So in this case, I'm going to choose our grade 8 math. Where do I want to choose a different section? I'm going to choose social studies because I actually have some stuff attached here. So I'll choose social. I'll hit export here. And then from here, I'll choose my standards to export, my grade 8 social studies standards. Now, once I've done that, I can click export. And what this will do is create a super handy PDF that shows me, okay, here's the range that we're looking at. Here's a list of my curricular outcomes. And here's the ones that I've addressed. So you saw me attach these two earlier. You can see that they've been annotated to be having taught one time on that September 18th lesson. As we go and add them to more spaces, you'll see this populated and show you how many times you've addressed each outcome, or maybe some that have been missed, or overtaught, or undertaught. Extremely useful. For the data nerds on the call, of which I am one, you can also export this instead of just as a PDF, as a CSV, which is a spreadsheet. And what that will do is give you the same information. You can do it, computer, I believe in you. The same information in a CSV that you can reference and use to compile all sorts of neat statistics. So again, lots of cool options here with Chalk that you can access.
There's one more thing, Scott, too, just while I know we're wrapping up, we're on the last minute, we're doing okay, is when you go, so I can see that you, on just this page right here on our standards page, if you go to the green ones, it'll take you to that lesson as well. So you know that you hit that outcome, you're like, oh, what lesson did I do again? And then it'll actually take you to that lesson in your planner. You'll be like, oh yeah, I taught that. Maybe my students need to revisit this, or I can move that lesson, copy it to do just to review, do some review. Perfect. Very flexible.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about that one. So thanks for the comment there, Jen. I totally forgot. It will route you right back to the lesson, which is super, super helpful. All right, and I'm looking at my hastily assembled Google Doc here with my list of things to talk about in 45 minutes, and I think we got them all. So
I think it's pretty good.
I think so. So,
is there any questions? If you want to stick around, I do feel like it's a very user-friendly tool. There's multiple access points if you want to go add standards. There's different ways to do it. Just under that lesson tab is very useful. The little videos, it's a tool you kind of need to play around with. But if there's any questions, I know Scott and I are more than happy to answer them or even jump on a quick Teams
and we can work it through, and we can stay around for a few minutes. Maybe we'll end the recording. I know there's a town hall.
Yes.
Very excited to hear all about that. So thank you for taking the time. We will send out the recording hopefully tomorrow or the next day.
Absolutely. So yeah, thanks again, folks, from me as well. And if you've got somewhere to be, please feel free to hit the road. The recording will be edited and sent out in the next couple of days, Monday at the latest, for your reference. Otherwise, feel free to stick around. As Jen said, we'll stop the recording and we'll take Q&A for a few minutes in the chat. Otherwise, thanks, everybody.